Welcome back to Spooky Speaks. I'm your host, and tonight we'll be delving into another chilling tale. Turn off the lights, draw the curtains, and prepare yourself for the horrors about to unfold. But remember, never watch alone, for darkness always harbors frightening secrets. Are you ready? Let's begin. The Secret Diaries. Alan tiredly entered his small apartment after a long day at work. He threw his old leather briefcase onto the sofa, then dragged himself into the bedroom. As he crossed the threshold, his eyes fell upon a strange object placed on the pillow. A small, dark red notebook. "That's odd," Alan muttered. "I'm sure I didn't leave this here." Curious, he picked up the notebook and opened it. On the first page, scrawled handwriting appeared. "June 15th, I can't take it anymore. Each passing day I feel more and more exhausted. Alan doesn't care about me at all. He keeps stuffing harmful things into his body, forcing me to work overtime to filter out all the toxins. I'm his left kidney, but it seems he's completely forgotten about my existence." Alan stared at the diary page in shock. He couldn't believe his eyes. How could his kidney possibly write a diary? This must be someone's joke. But no one else had keys to his apartment. With trembling hands, Alan turned to the next page. June 16th. Today was a terrible day. Alan drank all night, forcing me to work tirelessly to filter the enormous amount of alcohol in his blood. I feel like I'm about to burst. Why does he treat me so poorly? I just want a little care and attention. Alan felt anger rising within him. How dare a part of his body judge him like this? He was the master of this body. He had the right to do whatever he wanted. In his anger, Alan threw the notebook into the trash. He decided he would no longer pay attention to these absurd complaints. Instead, he opened the fridge, took out a can of beer, and drank it all. "You want to complain?" Alan muttered, looking down at his stomach. "Let's see how long you can last." In the following days, Alan deliberately did more things harmful to his health. He drank more alcohol, ate more fast food, and stayed up later. He wanted to prove that he was the one in control of this body. A week passed, and Alan began to feel tired and uncomfortable. His body seemed to be protesting against this unhealthy lifestyle. But he still refused to admit it and continued to abuse himself. One morning, when Alan had just woken up after a night of heavy drinking, he saw another dark red notebook placed on the bedside table. His heart pounded as he picked it up. This time, the handwriting in the notebook looked different. "June 23rd, I don't know how much longer I can endure. Alan is pushing me to my limits. I am his heart, but he treats me as if I'm his enemy. Every day, I have to pump blood through arteries clogged with fat. I feel myself growing weaker. If Alan doesn't change soon, I'm afraid one day I will stop beating." Alan felt a chill run down his spine. How was this possible? How could his heart write a diary? He began to feel scared, but also angry. How dare the parts of his body rebel against him like this? In his anger and fear, Alan decided to ignore these warnings. He continued his unhealthy lifestyle, even worse than before. He started smoking, although he had never done so before. In the following days, Alan constantly found new diaries appearing in his apartment. Each was written by a different part of his body: the liver, lungs, stomach. All complained about how Alan treated them. Alan became increasingly panicked. He began to doubt if he was losing his mind. How could this strange phenomenon be explained? The more he tried to find an answer, the more confused and frightened he became. One night, after drinking heavily, Alan woke up to find himself lying on the bathroom floor. Beside him was a sharp kitchen knife. Alan looked down at his body in horror and saw small cuts on his arms and chest. He couldn't remember what he had done, but it seemed that in his drunken state, he had tried to punish the body parts that had been writing about him. Horrified by his actions, Alan decided to seek help. He called a friend and told the whole story. The friend advised Alan to see a psychologist immediately. The next day, Alan went to a psychology clinic. Dr. Sarah listened to his story with a serious expression. When Alan finished, Dr. Sarah said gently, "Alan, I think you're dealing with a serious psychological issue. The diaries you're seeing could be a manifestation of your anxiety and guilt about your unhealthy lifestyle. Your mind is trying to send you a message in this way." Alan felt relieved that someone finally listened to him and explained things. He agreed to undergo psychological treatment and began to change his lifestyle. In the following weeks, Alan gradually improved his diet, started exercising, and stopped drinking. He felt his health improve significantly, and more importantly, he no longer saw the mysterious diaries. However, just as Alan was beginning to feel that things were getting better, a horrifying event occurred. One evening, as Alan was watching TV in the living room, he suddenly heard a strange noise from the bedroom. His heart pounding, he slowly approached the half-closed bedroom door. When he pushed it open, what he saw froze him in terror. On his bed, dozens of small notebooks of various colors were moving. They were jumping up and down, flipping pages, and seemed to be writing. Tiny pencils were dancing on the pages, leaving behind scrawled lines. Alan felt like he was falling into a nightmare. He tried to scream but couldn't make a sound. Suddenly, all the notebooks turned towards him simultaneously, as if looking at him with invisible eyes. Then, something even more terrifying happened. Alan felt something moving inside his body. He looked down and was horrified to realize that his skin was opening up. From the gaps in his skin, his internal organs began to emerge. Kidneys, heart, liver, all had bizarre shapes with tiny eyes and miniature arms. Alan screamed in horror as his organs began to crawl towards the notebooks on the bed. They picked up the tiny pencils and started writing. Alan could hear faint murmurs coming from them. "Must write, must tell everyone how Alan has treated us." Alan tried to run out of the room, but he felt his legs grow heavy. Looking down, he was horrified to see that the muscles in his legs were separating from the bones, crawling down to the floor and heading towards the bed. In utter panic, Alan collapsed onto the floor. He felt his body slowly disintegrating, each part wanting to separate, to write its own story. Alan tried to scream for help, but he realized that his throat had disappeared. It was crawling on the floor, heading towards the notebooks. Meanwhile, the notebooks on the bed seemed to be growing. They enlarged, their pages spinning like fans, creating a giant paper tornado. Alan could see thousands of lines of text appearing on those pages, recounting everything he had done to his body over the years. Suddenly, Alan heard a knock at the door. A glimmer of hope flashed in his mind. Perhaps it was a neighbor coming to check because they heard the noise. But that hope quickly faded when he realized he no longer had the ability to move or speak. The knocking at the door grew louder, more urgent. Alan tried to move, but all he could do was watch his body parts continue to separate and crawl towards the eerie notebooks. Suddenly, the bedroom door burst open. There was Dr. Sarah, who had been treating Alan psychologically for the past few weeks. She stood frozen, horrified at the scene before her. "Oh my God, Alan!" Dr. Sarah screamed. "What happened?" She quickly entered the room, trying to help Alan. But when she touched him, her hand passed through Alan's body as if it were made of smoke. "Alan, can you hear me?" Dr. Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I came here because you didn't show up for your appointment today. I had a bad feeling." Alan tried to answer, but he couldn't. Instead, one of the notebooks on the bed suddenly flew towards Dr. Sarah. It opened, and she began to read the words appearing on the page. Dear Dr. Sarah, we are Alan's body parts. We tried to warn him about his unhealthy lifestyle, but he wouldn't listen. Now, we have no choice but to take action. We are separating from Alan to tell our story, to warn others about the consequences of not caring for their health. Please help us spread this message. Dr. Sarah stepped back, unable to believe her eyes. She looked at Alan, who was now just a blurry shadow on the floor, then at the organs that continued to write tirelessly. Alan, she whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how serious the problem was. Suddenly, all the notebooks closed simultaneously. They stacked themselves neatly on the bed. Alan's internal organs also stopped writing and turned towards Dr. Sarah. A strange voice, as if composed of hundreds of small voices blended together, echoed in the room. Dr. Sarah, we need your help. Take these notebooks and share our story. Let people know that their bodies are not just mindless machines. We feel, we hurt, and we need to be cared for and nurtured. Dr. Sarah, still in a state of shock, nodded mechanically. She picked up the stack of notebooks from the bed, feeling them warm and alive in her hands. When she turned to look at Alan one last time, she realized that he had completely disappeared. All that remained were the internal organs, now slowly fading into the air like thin wisps of smoke. Dr. Sarah left the apartment with the stack of notebooks in her hands, her mind still unable to comprehend what had just happened. She knew that her life would never be the same after this event. In the months that followed, the story of Alan and the diaries of his internal organs began to spread. At first, many people thought it was just a fictional horror story. But then, similar cases began to appear all over the world. People started finding small notebooks in their homes, written by their own internal organs. Warnings, pleas for better care. Some people panicked. Some began to change their lifestyles. The medical world fell into chaos. Scientists couldn't explain this phenomenon with any known scientific theory. Some people believed it was a new evolution of the human species. Others thought it was a sign of the apocalypse. Dr. Sarah became a famous speaker, sharing Alan's story and urging people to listen to the voice of their bodies. She founded a nonprofit organization called Listen to Your Body, with the mission of helping people better understand and care for their health. 5 years after that horrifying event at a health conference, Dr. Sarah stood before thousands of people and began her speech. Dear friends, today I want to tell you about Alan, the man who lost everything because he didn't listen to his body. But more importantly, I want to talk about what we've learned from his tragedy. As she spoke, a gentle breeze blew through the conference hall, carrying a strange scent, the smell of old paper and ink. And for a moment, Dr. Sarah could swear she saw Alan's blurry figure standing at the back of the hall, smiling at her. She knew that Alan's story would continue to be told for many years to come, as a warning to all of us about the importance of listening to and caring for our bodies. Because, as we learned from Alan, sometimes the final warnings can come too late. As Dr. Sarah finished her speech, the entire conference hall fell silent. Everyone felt a vague fear, but also a strange sense of connection with their own bodies. Suddenly, a man stood up from the back row. He tremblingly pulled out a small green notebook from his coat pocket. I think I'm experiencing something similar, he said, his voice shaking. My liver, it's writing to me. This statement created a wave of commotion in the hall. Many others also began to pull out similar notebooks from their bags and pockets. Each notebook was a different color, representing different organs in the body. Dr. Sarah realized that this had gone far beyond Alan's individual case. This was a global phenomenon. an awakening of body consciousness on an unprecedented scale. In the months that followed, the world witnessed an unprecedented change. Governments around the globe had to enact new laws to deal with this situation. Health insurance companies began requiring evidence of body listening as a condition for insurance. A new industry emerged: translation services for organ language. Specially trained experts helped people understand what their organs were trying to communicate through these mysterious diaries. However, not everyone accepted this change easily. Some people believed it was a global conspiracy, an effort to control the population through fear. Body freedom groups emerged, claiming they had the right to treat their bodies as they wished, despite warnings from their internal organs. A year after the event at the conference hall, Dr. Sarah received an emergency call from a local hospital. They had admitted a patient with strange symptoms. His internal organs seemed to be trying to separate from his body. When Sarah arrived, she recognized the patient. It was the man who had stood up in the conference hall last year, the first to share about his liver's diary. "I tried to listen to them," the man whispered, sweat pouring down his forehead, "but there were too many voices, too many demands. I couldn't satisfy them all." Sarah looked down at the man's body and was horrified to see that his skin was moving, as if something underneath was trying to escape. "We tried to operate to see what was happening," a surgeon told Sarah, "but every time we cut, the wound healed instantly. It's as if the organs are protecting themselves." Sarah felt a deep fear. She realized that this situation had gone far beyond human control. The organs were no longer just writing diaries. They were developing their own consciousness and will. In the days that followed, more and more similar cases were reported worldwide. People began to talk about the organ uprising, a phenomenon in which body parts seem to be trying to separate from their owners. Scientists worked tirelessly to find a solution, but there seemed to be no way to stop this process. The world fell into chaos as more and more people disintegrated, their bodies separating into individual organs, each organ carrying a part of that person's consciousness. Sarah, now a leading expert on this phenomenon, realized that this could be the next step in human evolution. Perhaps, she pondered, this was nature's way of forcing us to reconsider our relationship with our bodies. One evening, as Sarah sat in her office trying to find a solution to this global crisis, she felt a sharp pain in her chest. She looked down and was horrified to see that a part of the skin on her chest was moving. With trembling hands, Sarah picked up a piece of paper and began to write. "This is Dr. Sarah. If anyone finds this, please understand that what's happening is not the end. This is the beginning of a new era, a new understanding of ourselves and our bodies. Don't be afraid. Listen. Learn to live in harmony with every part of yourself. Because in the end, we are not just single individuals, but a community of billions of cells and organs, all trying to survive and thrive together." As Sarah wrote the final lines, she felt her body begin to change. But instead of fear, she felt a strange peace. She closed her eyes, accepting her fate and that of all humanity. And so the new era of humanity began, an era where the boundary between self and body no longer existed, where each cell, each organ had its own voice. It was a new world, frightening, but also full of promise, a world that Alan, the first man to disintegrate, had inadvertently opened the door to. The story of the secret diaries of internal organs ends here, but humanity's journey in understanding and accepting its new nature has only just begun. And in the infinite space of the universe, perhaps somewhere, Alan is smiling, finally in harmony with every part of himself. And there you have it, dear friends of Spooky Speaks, the tale of the secret diaries, and the rebellion of internal organs. I don't know about you, but after telling this story, I feel the need to get a full medical checkup immediately. Who knows? Maybe my liver is secretly writing a novel about my life. If you find your skin moving strangely after watching this video, don't panic. Instead, comment below right away. I'm very curious to see how many of you are starting to listen to your body in this new way. And hey, if you want to hear more creepy, mysterious stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Who knows, my next video might be about the rebellion of brain cells or the great escape of hair strands. Oh, I'm feeling a bit itchy on my scalp already. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like as big as Alan's kidney. And don't forget to share this video with your friends. Who knows, their internal organs might really need to watch this too. This is Spooky Speaks, wishing you sweet dreams and reminding you to listen to your body. It might be trying to tell you something important. See you in the next video, if I'm still in one piece by then.